What is going on, FA Nation? My name is Justin Fensterman, along with James Grande, and this is the DFS NBA live stream. James, what's going on, man?
What is
Down
going
to
on,
9
FA
games,
Nation?
but
My
it's
name is
okay.
Justin
I know
Fensterman,
you were a
along
little
with
sad
James
about
Grande.
Portland, Memphis getting postponed, but dude, that means 9 games to dominate. Take those players out of the pool and let us feast on some guys actually playing.
Yeah, definitely a little bummed about the Memphis-Portland game, but like you said, there's 9 games, there's plenty of options, and a lot of great spots that we're going to attack here throughout this live stream, Fancy.
Yep, we're going to go position by position and talk about some of the players in the DFS NBA playbook, which Jimmy Grande had a big part of here on fantasyalarm.com. So we're going to talk about that. And let's first go through the injuries because we have a lot of injuries. We have a lot of COVID. So besides the players not playing because of the game getting postponed, we also have the following with COVID: Karl Anthony Towns, Jason Tatum still there, Jimmy Butler as well. John Wall dealing with some knee soreness, so he's going to be out. Miles Turner, very interesting one, James. Let's start here for a second. Miles Turner, he has a fractured hand. Why is he potentially playing tonight? I don't get it. I don't understand.
I mean, I don't know either, and we know Indiana's depleted. Maybe they're less likely to play him with Goga back and possibly Jakar Sampson back. So I'm with you. It's actually a pretty good spot when you look at the Dallas front court, other than Porzingis, who's going to have his hands full with Sabonis. But it's still like, how limited would he be if he played? How much use is going to have of the hand? So whether or not he plays, it's not really an interest of me, or it should be of anyone on this DFS slate.
Andrew Wiggins dealing with a sore knee, he's questionable. Tyler Hero with a neck stiffness, he's questionable. Colin Sexton, Darius Garland, they've gone through shoot around, so we'll have to see about their status right now, questionable with their injuries. And then one I just saw, which is like a stake to my heart here, because if you go and watch my starting 5 videos on fantasyalarm.com, you will see, Grande, that I'm a big fan of this team right here, Grande. And now I'm seeing that DeAndre Hunter, who I love tonight, along with Cam Reddish, but DeAndre Hunter, who I loved, both are now doubtful, and I'm starting to hate life just a little bit.
So this is just coming full circle for all of us, because we crapped on the Kevin Huerter 9.5K price tag on DraftKings, and here we are, Kevin Huerter, the only wing left in Atlanta, 9.5K. Give me all the... Just kidding. Don't play Kevin Huerter at 9.5K. But let's hope the dog does not pee on that.
That might be the funniest thing you ever said, Grande. Bravo
Thanks.
on that.
Thanks.
Love this. Love being with my guy at the _real_Grande_hilarious on Twitter. Seth Curry's still out because of conditioning now, coming back from COVID. Ricky Rubio dealing with the COVID. He is out. Lou Williams. I mean, has Lou Williams actually been active this year? That's a debate there, Grande, in itself, but he's questionable with a hip injury. Gallinari is still out with this ankle injury. The COVID Mavs are still in effect. Richardson, Kleba, Powell, Finney Smith, Daniel House Jr. is dealing with COVID. And then this one, because we just talked about Miles Turner now, whether or not he's going to play. From the Pacers, Jeremy Lamb available. No lock that he's going to play, coming back from a major knee injury. But man, Jeremy Lamb, we could see him make his debut tonight, Grande. And like you and I were talking about before, you can't think that he's going near 25 minutes. I don't even think he's hitting 20.
No, it probably sits in that 15 to 17 minute range just to get his feet wet, if that. But Jeremy Lamb is going to be a factor in this rotation with the departure of Victor Oladipo and obviously the recent news that Karis LeVert's out indefinitely. So when Jeremy Lamb is up to speed, he's going to be playing likely close to 30 minutes a night, just with the wing depth, the lack of wing depth Indiana has right now. So good to see him back. Don't think he's worth it in DFS tonight, especially with a 9-game slate, but definitely worth noting that Jeremy Lamb is returning tonight.
Yeah, Jakar Sampson from the same squad is dealing with a back injury. He's questionable. Dario Saric is dealing with COVID. He's out. Hassan Whiteside, another guy. Has he actually been active this season or not? He's like Lou Williams dealing with a questionable tag and a hip injury. And then I just saw this cross when it comes to the Celtics. Just to give for context sake, I'm seeing that Robert Williams is going to be on a minutes limit of about close to 15 minutes for this game. So that's something just to think about. Every status worth noting, Grande. Let's get to what we have on this playbook. And let's start with the high-priced guys at point guard, because absolutely that's what we have to do. And who sticks out to you, man? Because for me, and this goes back to how I plan the starting five, I'm only going to give the top price chalk guy if I know I'm getting 4 to 5x on that price point. And when you're thinking of the guys like Curry that are up there, I'm kind of looking more in the value tier, the second tier, and I'm looking at the DeJounte Murrays of the world, guys who I know can grab at least 7 boards like he's been averaging. Where do you stand?
So I definitely think this Atlanta news makes Trae Young a little more interesting. Again, there's going to be a lack of depth on the wing. DeAndre Hunter and Cam Reddish have been higher usage players than they have been in the last Reddish last year. So I'm willing to go back to Trae Young, 50-plus fantasy points in 2 straight. Could get a lot of Derrick Rose defense. DeLon Wright is a pretty good defender in the backcourt, but we're seeing back-to-back double-doubles out of Young, and he's contributing on the glass too, which, I mean, hard to not like. So I like there. Obviously, Curry, two. It's not something I want to trust in cash. It's been a roller coaster with Curry, but the highs have been 70 fantasy points. So I definitely think he's viable in tournaments. Obviously, you could play Luka. I think the recency bias is going to keep some people off since that dud he put up against Milwaukee. Wasn't Milwaukee. It was, who did they play? Toronto. Sorry, my apologies. Can go back to the well with Luka if you would want. He's a triple-double machine, averaging almost 2 fantasy points per game, or 2 fantasy points per minute with Kristaps Porzingis. But I do like the mid-tier guys. Murray's fine. I don't like the shot attempts the last 2 games with a fully healthy Spurs team, like with DeRozan back, Aldridge back, 10 shot attempts the last 2 games. I don't love that. Kyle Lowry's fine for cash games. And De'Aaron Fox, we just saw come off a career high. Wouldn't play Fox on DK, but on FanDuel, the price is right. Shout out Bob Barker.
Yeah. Watch that Wiggins status, because that will make you want to go in more on Curry. It's, again, not right. 10K, but if Wiggins is out, then that floor rises, and that's where I like Curry a little bit more, because he's not Mr. Automatic like he used to be. And I'll just say this about DeJounte Murray, and then I'll be done selling him. Here's the one thing I do like with Murray. Even though you're right, the shot attempts aren't always there. If this guy is going to keep filling up the stat sheet when it comes to boards and dimes, that gives us a safe floor with the smaller amount of shot attempts. Do you disagree on that?
I don't disagree. It's just I like higher usage players in DFS. You can control more when you're the one shooting the basketball than as opposed to if he's passing the ball, and if all his teammates aren't making shots, then we're SOL. So right. That's kind of where I tend to lean. I tend to lean towards the higher usage players in DFS. But I don't hate Murray because he is consistent in the other categories. Let's see, we're at point guard. I think it's important to note Kyrie Irving officially in the starting lineup tonight. Okay. And I know there's been some conversations about him potentially coming off the bench. And I told John and I had this discussion last night on the podcast, and I'm kind of sticking to my guns here. I'm kind of taking this whole Brooklyn approach as a wait and see, because I think
that's smart.
I think obviously we could be missing the boat here, and there's obviously 60-point upside for Harden. There's 60-point upside with Durant when his shot. I mean, he's one of the best players we've seen offensively ever. And then Kyrie is playing his Cleveland team. There wasn't a real injury, so is he even going to need to have his minutes monitored? I don't think so. So that could bite me in the butt, but I'm willing to take that risk in a slow-paced game against Cleveland, one that they could just walk all over. So I'm kind of taking a wait-and-see approach here with Brooklyn, not, if anything, playing them in tournaments, but not touching them in cash games.
I mean, but and I think that's smart because let's be real, it can be any one or any of the two of the three.
Right.
It's not going to be all three of them that go off. And again, I know when you look at this Nets team that they don't have many scorers. It's three guys and Joe Harris. That's about it pretty much when it comes to scorers on this team. So with that, even though there's that imbalance and they have nothing in the front court to offer because DeAndre Jordan, after all these years, is still raw as hell offensively, still we don't know which one's going to go off. So if you're going to ask me to go after one of them versus Trae Young, who's dealing with his own team being banged up, I'm going to go Trae Young if I'm going to pay up for any of these guys.
I agree. I mean, Trae Young, Curry, I'd rank all those guys pretty much in the playbook ahead of Kyrie.
By the way, I just saw this come across. Kemba Walker is also on restriction, 20 minutes.
Doesn't do anything for me until, especially on these bigger slates, until we start getting into like the 26 to 30 minute range. I don't think we need to touch Kemba.
And here's the other thing. The guy just came back from being out and he hurt his side. Okay. So something is telling me, something in the universe is telling me that his conditioning might still not be up to speed or his body might not be catching up quick enough.
He took a big shot in that game. He walked into a big shot, and it wasn't necessarily his fault, just wrong place, wrong time. So I don't buy into the conditioning thing. I just think that was just an unfortunate little incident that happened, and if they have to limit him one more game, they have to limit him one more game, but it doesn't give us any hope for tonight's slate at all.
Yep. Let's hit the value tier because there's someone I want to ask you about. I don't know why I love talking about the Orlando Magic with you. Going back to last year, I still do. Maybe because we both loved the sauce, Terrence Ross, so much last year. But someone I don't like at all on this team thus far. I can't stand Cole Anthony's shot selection, bro. Again, we're not caring about the percentages. He's a brutal shooter, man. He's got every opportunity to succeed, not only for the short term, for the rest of the year. And his shots are just garbage, man. And I know the price point's there. I know the minutes are going to be there and the usage by default will also be there. But this guy is just crap, man. What about you? What do you think?
I mean, I don't disagree. And the jury was out on him in college, and Agreed. He was on a bad North Carolina team, and he was the number one option, and it was volume. And it wasn't efficiency, it was just volume, pure offensive volume. And that's why he got to almost 20 points a game in North Carolina. He's getting the volume here. He's not making any shots. But ultimately, we don't get negative points for missed shots in DFS. Right. And in season long, I can understand you're being reserved on Anthony. In DFS, especially on a slate where he's getting Minnesota in a pace-up spot, they don't have rim protection. They don't really have anything to stop the Magic, and that's crazy because you don't really think of the Magic as an offensive juggernaut. But, he's going to play the minutes. He's going to get the shots, and they're going to be open. And you alluded to, he has a 25% usage when the likes of Fournier, Fultz, MCW are off the floor. So as much as we may not like Cole Anthony and think he has the longevity to be a legit player in the NBA, right now for this Wednesday slate, it's a good spot, man. It's a good spot against a bad Minnesota defense. And I told John last night I like this game as a sneaky stack, more from the Magic side because it's a pace-up spot. And you pair Anthony with Vucevic. I mean, we saw 40-point upside out of this guy just against Brooklyn a couple of games ago. And that's ultimately what it comes down to. And I agree, from a basketball perspective, he is not going to last if he continues to play the way he has. But
Does it worry you, though, that Fournier could be more involved in this game?
Not really, because Fournier hasn't played since the 31st of December, so we're 2 weeks off. with a back injury, I think that they're just so depleted at point guard that Anthony's still going to get his 30 minutes. And I'm cool with that. I'm not like playing him in cash, but I definitely deploy him in a tournament where I'm fully expecting him, regardless of Fournier being active or not, to get 30 minutes.
All right, let's move on then to the shooting guard position. I love the back and forths we have during these streams here. And when it comes to who you're paying up for, again, you got to look at the matchup a little bit. And that Orlando-Minnesota game is a great matchup, especially on the guard side, because both defenses are just not good. And then you can always look at another option that I'm seeing in our playbook as well, Grande, Paul George. And again, I love attacking Sacramento. I have made a lot of money in DFS off attacking Sacramento. They don't play defense. It's embarrassing. They really don't play defense. They are just watching them. I don't need to see any stats. You don't need to throw any crazy stat at me. You can see it when you watch that this team forfeits on defense.
I mean, I'm going to give you the stats anyway. They are the worst team statistically in the NBA in defensive rating. They are dead last against shooting guards, which Paul George is playing this year. It's a match made in heaven, and I know he's let us down the last couple games, and I've been on him these last couple games. They've been good spots. One against this Kings team. It's tough to think the Kings will keep it close in Los Angeles, but it's also hard not to love George if they do. Maybe more of a tournament play, because if this game blows out, Paul George is not on the floor for very long. He won't play that fourth quarter, but when you give me Paul George, who's shown near 60 fantasy point upside against the worst defensive team in the NBA, I mean, sign me up.
What do you think about Booker tonight?
So I like the volume on shots, but with the addition of Chris Paul and, you know, the emergence of Mikal Bridges and Jay Crowder's addition, and I know Cam Johnson's starting and whatnot, but there has not been peripheral stats for Devin Booker. There has not been. And it's something that he was actually improving on last year, where we were getting kind of that point Booker-ish look when like guys like Elliot Kobo were starting at point guard, and they were a dumpster fire there when Rubio was hurt, whatever. But he's not getting anything. I mean, just 2 games ago, he scores 33 points, 0 assists, 3 rebounds. Like, when you're talking about a guy over 8K and you're not getting anything and you're relying on just points, I mean, you're not, like, you have to be a James Harden type scorer, or at least volume-wise, playing by himself. Booker's not playing by himself. Booker has Chris Paul. Booker has a emerging Mikal Bridges. Booker has DeAndre Ayton, who looked better than he ever has last game. So I'm not necessarily on it at 8,200. I think that price point is steep. I would rather go down to the lower tier, guys like Derrick Rose on FanDuel at 6,500, who has looked great the last 2 games. And something that I always look at when I'm talking about Derrick Rose is, are they on a back-to-back? They are not. They didn't play last night. They do not play tomorrow. Generally, they expand Rose's minutes when that happens, 26, 27, 28. We don't need much more than that for Derrick Rose to fill it up, and we've seen it the last 2 nights. He almost gave us 40 fantasy points. If Tyler Hero plays, I think that's an intriguing spot with no Jimmy Butler. Kevin Huerter, who we've joked about all day at 9,500 on DK, he's only 5,500 on FanDuel with possibly no Cam Reddish. We already know Bogdan's out. We know Gallo's out. And DeAndre Hunter's doubtful. So, like, there's, again, no wings in Atlanta. Kevin Huerter against Detroit, I think it becomes a really interesting play over on FanDuel. I can't wait to see his ownership on DraftKings. I don't know who in their right mind would play him at 9,500. Maybe just for, like, the lulz, you know, just like, hey, I'm just going to throw this lineup away. But I really like this mid-tier as opposed to paying up for Devin Booker. I almost feel like I can get the same upside out of like Kevin Huerter at 55 if none of those guys play, because he's going to stuff the box score. And I don't feel confident that Devin Booker will.
I agree with you because of the price, but can I sell you on for another minute on Devin Booker?
Sure.
You brought up his 0 assist game. You didn't bring up any of the other games around that when he was getting at least 3 or 4 a game. And that's fine. That's a little bit, Grande. That's not a lot. It's a little bit. You go to his rebounding. Yes, he had a 0 in there a few games ago, but he's been grabbing 3 a game. that adds up a little bit. And what about the steals too, man? A lot of steals lately. And I'm with you there with price point on FanDuel for Herder, not DraftKings. But when it comes to Booker, between what we've seen from the scoring outside of his previous game as of late, don't you think that he's been helping out in enough categories that even if he does take a dive a little bit scoring, maybe he could still hit 3 to 4x with where else he's been producing?
So the problem becomes when you're constructing your lineups, in cash games, your floor, you want 5x, right? So you want your floor to be 5x for every player in your cash game builds. You can get away with 4.5x for the cheaper guys. When you start talking about guys that are like 7.5 and above, you need that ceiling, or you need the floor to be 5x, because if you don't get that return, the field, who has somebody at that same price tag, gets their guy at 7x. We're not going to jump them. We're going to fall behind. So I don't feel the need to get to Devin Booker at 8,200, because I don't know if there's like, I almost feel like 5x is the ceiling at this price. And I can't justify using someone at a ceiling at 8.2 when I can go get D'Angelo Russell, who just showed 60-point upside for $600 more, or go down to those guys I mentioned who have 6, 7x at their price point, given their situations and matchups. So that's kind of how price point does play a factor. And I think Devin Booker is obviously the better player of all those guys I mentioned. I'm just personally not in on Devin Booker this evening.
No, and that's totally fine, and that's why it's good. Hey, that's what's good about our NBA team. We always have differences of opinions. Let's talk about another situation. By the way, we're going to go to the small forwards here, and speaking of 3s and 4s, you have Taurean Prince, not only him, but Jarrett Allen I'm seeing as well. They will be available for their Cavs debut tonight, so that's just something to think about as well. But moving back to the small forwards, at this point, Jeremy Grant, is he a must play?
Oh my God.
Until he's 9K, 9.5? I mean, how much is too much? I ask that question a lot. But when it comes to this guy, there are not many options in Detroit. And he and Blake Griffin won't clash because both of them are needed so badly to give this team any kind of offense.
Yeah, I mean, the minutes are there, even in blowouts. The production's there, even in blowouts. He's really just bulletproof right now, Fensty, and he provides us with defensive stats. He's averaging over a block and over a steal. The shooting has been pretty tremendous, 47% from the floor, 39% from 3. Like, boy, does Denver wish they still had this guy, I'm sure. Yeah, and it's against Atlanta, who now have already been terrible against a small forward, and now they're missing DeAndre Hunter, who's a pretty good wing defender, Cam Reddish, who's a nasty defender, not like the best, but he's annoying. So, I think it's really hard not to like Jeremy Grant, and I agree. I think that's really where I would start at the small forward. Like, I think Kawhi is a really great play if that game stays close. Same with Jaylen Brown. But
I like Oubre. I like your Oubre play.
Oh, he's a core play for me tonight, Fensty.
Yeah.
And, John brought this up last night, or we were talking the other night with Sean and I. Steve Kerr is bringing him in where they were bringing in Wiggins as that second unit lead scorer. And Oubre's looked great doing so. And if that's going to be his unit where he's getting all the volume, all the usage, all the shot attempts, like, why wouldn't we continue to roll him out? I mean, we saw 37 minutes the last time out, which we haven't seen in a while. He's scoring. He's hit multiple threes in a couple games in a row after that dreadful start.
But he's not just camping out there, though.
He's not.
And that's what I love, because Kelly Oubre Jr. is someone who I've been following because he's always given me that intrigue, because I always have these what if, or how can this guy further grow? Because I happen to think that he's a very good player and a very good defender, especially. But here's the thing with him, what I like, and we're seeing the multiple double-digit scoring outings, and he's rebounding, but he's getting inside. And he's a player that when things are going well, you keep feeding him no matter what. When things are not going well, he gets inside his head. You keep him isolated out on that arc as a bailout option. I'm glad to see that he's driving and not just camping out at that arc like we saw a lot last year.
Yeah, well, a lot last year. I remember all the highlights that he was just dunking on everyone. And that was when he was at his peak. He was dunking on everyone, just attacking the rim, attacking the rim, attacking the rim. So it's good to see Kelly Oubre. I'm going out flat out saying he's a core play for me tonight. That the price tag across the board is too cheap. Cash games, tournaments, doesn't matter. The matchup's elite. Give me all the Kelly Oubre we can handle tonight.
Let's move over to the big men because I'm reading more notes here about Miles Turner. He is warming up, but he's still questionable for this game. Is it really a fracture, Indiana? Like, I guess, are we loosening the term of fracture? Because if something is broken, something's chipped in there, why is this guy playing? I don't understand. And it's ruining me because I've got plays on the other side that I like. So let's continue watching this saga of Miles Turner, whether or not he'll play. And let's talk about Domantas Sabonis at this point, Grande, because let's say Turner plays. You just faded him or you still going in?
I've been on the fence with Sabonis all day. I didn't like the spot the other day, and he just came through. He just comes through every night. This feels more cashy to me, just considering we're now approaching 10K. And we've seen 60-point upside, so I know there's still a ceiling in there. But, like, Porzingis is a different breed of defender. Like, he is so lengthy for people and gives a lot of people issues. And the mobility is not an issue for Porzingis at all following the injury. Like, clearly, he played 30-plus minutes on a back-to-back, and he looks good doing so. So this is a tough spot for Sabonis. I think this is one of the toughest spots that he's had this year. But he's looked good in tough spots before. So I think you can go to the well with Sabonis. I'm more on him in cash games because I don't think this is a ceiling type of game. I think he can get to 50, which gives us 5X, a little above 5X, but I don't think this is a 60 burger or a 60 fillet, as John and I have coined, because if you get 60, I mean, you deserve a fillet after that hard work that you put in. So I think Sabonis is fine, but again, tough matchup. And, the guy on the other side is too cheap. If we're being honest.
I was raising the roof before. You were looking down, and I was raising that roof because I put him in the starting 5. And like you said, it's too cheap. Mm-hmm. They don't have much of their front court. Even when everyone's healthy, their front court sucks.
Right. It does suck.
They have no depth. I'm sorry, but Maxi Kleba and Dwight Powell and Porzingis combined with Willie Cauley-Stein, that and Dorian Finney-Smith. And I like Dorian Finney-Smith. That doesn't really do it for me. So with a lot of those guys out, you have Porzingis there, and that's the key that you mentioned, Grande. Back-to-back nights, both nights 30 minutes. This guy is going off at this price point.
Yeah, and, he's such a high-usage player, and with so much attention on Luka, it's just so hard to double Porzingis or double Luka. They just get one-on-one matchups everywhere. They have so many matchup issues that they present other teams, and Porzingis is he's a unicorn, and I hate he really is, and we're not going to get this.
I disagree with that.
What?
I disagree with it. I think a unicorn is someone that can do just about everything. I kind of think his defense is pretty lousy.
I think Porzingis defensively presents a ton of matchup issues because of his length. I think obviously there's opportunity to improve. There's a lack of defense across the NBA in general, but he's 7'2" with a wingspan that travels around the world.
That's true.
2+ blocks in all 4 games. Maybe he sells out for the blocks a little too much, but that length can create a lot of issues for people.
It can. And I will say this, when I put him in the starting 5 earlier today, I was assuming, and I guess you know what happens when you assume, because Miles Turner hasn't been ruled out. I liked it, James, and I want to give you my strategy so everybody learns if they have the same thought process. When it came to Porzingis for today and Miles Turner on the other side, Turner being out, I thought would, if he is ruled out, if he's not, we'll see. But if it's just Domantas Sabonis, he's stuck in the lane. He can't go out and defend Porzingis because then you're going to have Luka, who I even said this in the video. He's one of the best drivers, one of the most unstoppable drivers in the league. You need Sabonis to stay in that paint. You can't afford him going out. So I thought Porzingis would be shooting high percentage jumpers from the outside without a hand in his face all day. Miles Turner potentially being there allows one of the two to have the freedom to roam around the elbow and arc.
I like that. You have such a real life basketball mindset. I like that, and I think more people should, instead of just looking at it from a numbers perspective. Tyler Hero ruled out, Fancy, officially.
Yeah, and I'm seeing Goran Dragic is going to play. Yep, I'm seeing that as well. So a lot of injuries, and we're still waiting, by the way, on Hunter Reddish. Let's just say Hunter ends up suiting up. You're seeing that he was doubtful going in. How do you normally deal with something like that? Because again, they've got other guys out, so they need people to put offense on there. You know that Clint Capella is stuck at that low block. He can't really do anything else. Do you still roll the dice with Hunter, or do you just stay away?
I mean, considering we have late swap on both sites now, you can play someone who's 6,200. We're going to know the NBA requires their lineups half an hour, or their injury news half an hour before tip. So 7:30 tip, we should know before lineup lock. And even if you don't, like, you could put someone that's 62 or more in, and if you really have a desire to play DeAndre Hunter, you can plug him in for that guy if they're playing post 7:30. So I don't hate the spot. I think it's a really good spot. I think if both of them do sit, you can go to like someone like Solomon Hill, who is power forward, and I think that's a good spot to talk about a little power forward value. If Reddish and DeAndre Hunter sit, I think Solomon Hill could potentially be an option. I mean, he played 22, 24, 26 minutes last week with when they were depleted at that kind of that shooting guard to power forward spot. So I think Hill could present some value, but it's weird how Atlanta's handling this injury news, because they were probable all day, then they're doubtful, and now they're game time decisions. So
I know it sucks.
I mean, just make up your mind. You probably know if they're going to play or not. But let me just run through a couple more power forwards. I think Chris Boucher is an elite tournament play, and no one's playing him again. If you look at the ownership percentages, I just don't understand why no one's going to play him again.
And he's shooting lights out, by the way.
He's dominating
all over the floor.
He is dominating. It's only a matter of time before Aaron Baines is just not start. Like, just please start this guy. Like, I don't get it, but whatever's working, I guess. Aaron Gordon, now point guard eligible on DraftKings. He's looked really good. Again, I told you, I think this game is sneaky from the Orlando side specifically. Big pace-up spot. And Draymond Green has looked really good lately, and he's really cheap. And then Jared Vanderbilt, on the other side of this, played 30 minutes, or nearly 30 minutes, gave us 29 fantasy points. I think he should start here again. And I know Vucevic can get him in foul trouble, and Aaron Gordon can get him in foul trouble, but he's a really good fantasy point per minute guy. If he gets us 26 minutes, he can get us 30 fantasy points, and that's all we need. And then my sneaky play the other night was Marcus Morris, Fensty. I'm willing to go back to the well here against Kings, who, by the way, I don't know if you guys have heard, you may have heard it around the wire. They don't play any defense, Fensty. I don't know if you. I don't know if you do that.
Wow! Breaking news!
Breaking news! The Kings do not play much defense.
That is some breaking news right there. Seriously, you got to attack them. Nightly basis, we're attacking them. So those are some of the power forwards. Now moving on to center for a few minutes here. You mentioned Vucevic. It's obviously a good play going up against Minnesota, but you're paying a very hefty price tag. Or you could pay the hefty price tag for someone like a Christian Wood, or even I'm seeing in the playbook someone who has burned me a few times, and not just because he's a son, it's because DeAndre Ayton, Grande, every time I put him in the starting five, he doesn't do anything. So you know what that means, Grande? 2020 tonight.
I mean, they were praising him for how he played against Memphis. Chris Paul was out there saying this is the guy that he could be every single night. But he just hasn't. He hasn't fit well with this team, and there's so much more potential, and he kind of showed that in that Memphis game. And I think that game is gonna just kind of springboard him forward here. Plus, it's a good matchup. Like, Phoenix plays so slow, and they get a pace-up spot against Houston. Houston ranks 27th against centers in DVP this year, so I don't really think there's a downside to playing DeAndre Ayton unless he reverts back to the guy we've seen for most of the year. We've seen a couple 40-point fantasy games, and at this price, that's really good. For the most part, though, Fancy, I'm spending up because you mentioned Vucevic. 8,600 doesn't scare me. This is an elite spot. Minnesota's dead last against centers. Bam Adebayo against, Toronto, who plays Aaron Baines for 8 minutes, and then they turn to Boucher, who can block a lot of shots but gets in foul trouble. I mean, Bam's gone for 50+. We know he's one of the best big men to run your offense through. He is an outstanding passer. He's an outstanding just everything. Has gone for 50+ fantasy points in 2 straight. And again, no Butler, no Hero. The offense is going to be flowing through Bam again. Those 2 guys I'm going to have a lot of shares in. So as much as I like Ayton and I like Christian Wood a lot in tournaments, nobody really plays Christian Wood a lot. And I don't know why, because he's been so good. And he's been I've been a big fan of Christian Wood the last 2 years, just pleading for Detroit to give him time. And all the teams that he's played for, because he hasn't been just Detroit. It's been a couple teams. I'm mostly sticking with Bam and Vooch tonight, and I just can't believe Bam is checking in under 10% ownership. I guess that's prior to the Tyler Hero news, and that number should rise. But if you're telling me I'm going to get Bam Adebayo under 10% tonight without Butler, without Hero, I feel like I can win a tournament.
Yeah, and you just kind of ruined my fire because
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to.
Well, it's okay. You tend to do that from time to time. That's just you, man. But it's a good thing you did because you opened my eyes and you raised my awareness further on Bam. Because I'll be honest, I was all about Clint Capella, and especially now with these injury designations. And we've talked about before that he doesn't score a lot of points. However, you look at the last couple of games.
Yeah, he's
over 20 points scored in both of them, and he's a rebounding machine.
Yeah, it's something I brought up to John last night, and he isn't someone we particular pegged to shoot 16 times in a game, and he's now done it twice in a row. And I said to John last night, these are the numbers we wanted out of John Collins. This is what we were hoping out of John Collins. I'm sorry, I know it opens up a fresh wound, Fency, but I mean, this is what we were thinking. 23-15. Oh, it's a John Collins line. Right? But it's not. 16 shot attempts. It's out of Capella. It's a good spot. Mason Plumlee, he tries, he hustles. But that's to the extent that I'll go about Mason Plumlee, right? He's going to try for 30 minutes. He's going to try really hard, but he's not going to be able to.
I feel like with you're like what you say with your kid. It's like, oh, how's Johnny doing in soccer? Oh, he tries.
What pick out what does Mason Plumlee do really well?
Nothing.
Okay, then there you go.
This Clint Capella play.
He tries. He tries really well. He tries really well.
I mean, he tries very hard, yes, and he's had some success. You see it in the stat, and also he's the default option. They have no one else there to really play the 5. Yeah, that's Detroit, but someone that could probably play the 5 if signed is my broadcast partner here on the live stream, James Grande. Give him a follow on Twitter at @the_real_Grande. Give me a follow at FenceD Sports, 9-game slate. Get on the site, fantasyalarm.com. Get in the chat. Get the help you need to succeed and crush it for Grande. I'm FenceD. Let's always dominate. No other option.